If I knew I was going to be on tape, I'd have dressed up a little bit more for this, so I apologize for that. For those who don't know me, my name is Steve Young, 1536 Richmond Avenue, and I've lived in DuPont since October of 2000. I was elected on the council 2002, 2003, mayor from 2004 to 2007. Over the last 2 years, I've been approached numerous times by my citizens here, our citizens, about what the hell happened in this building. And I'm here to lay out the truth once and for all, because I'm tired of listening to it. I want to put this to bed. When I inherited this ship in 2004, and being a Navy guy, when you relieve as the commanding officer of the ship, you have ultimate responsibilities. No matter what happened the day before, no matter what your commanding officer was like the day before, it doesn't matter. You own it when you say, "I relieve you, sir." First thing I did was interview folks from the community. I talked to folks that were in our then quadrant, and their biggest complaint was, why can you not get me a building permit in a short amount of time? So when I went to the city hall that we had at the time and into the spaces, and I found piles of stuff stacked on things, they couldn't find anything in there. There's just pile after pile after pile. And it wasn't due to lack of effort, it was due to lack of space. As was mentioned by Councilmember Aaron Wright, you know, when you looked at the fire department, you looked at the police department, we were under a serious crisis. When I came on the council in 2002, we were the fastest growing community in the state. And through that time, through the end of my term in 2007, we continued to be the fastest growing community in the state, to the tune of 20 to 25% per capita growth each and every year. So something had to happen. We could no longer exist in the buildings we were in. We had to make some adjustments to do what was right for the community. And as a result of that, I sought the concurrence of council in 2004 to begin a feasibility study. It cost us some money, $50,000, $60,000, I can't remember what it was, to start thinking, what would this facility and our public safety building have to look like that would support the needs of a city of 12,500 people going forward into the future? So over the course of a year and a half time, between 2004 into 2005, there were a number of charrettes that were held around the community where citizens were invited to participate. I think we had 2 council members that participated as well. And we got the inputs. I also directed the consultant at that time to say, hey, go look and see what other communities are doing. We don't want to be the smartest guys in the book. Go look at comparable sized communities, go look at comparable funded communities, and figure out what those guys are doing. Because I don't want to reinvent the wheel here, right? There's no sense in that. So about mid-2005-ish, there was a plan. We went through it, we looked at the floor plan, we looked at what was laid out. Next, we proceeded to the financing stage. So roughly in 2005, once again, with the concurrence of council, remember, the chief executive of this city is nothing more but the person that implements the policy as set forth by council. So with concurrence of council, I led a contract to a financial consultant to help us develop the plan. What, if any, options do we have as a city should we decide to embark on building the Civic Center Public Safety Complex, which, by the way, as was mentioned, is required by the comp plan. We were already in violation of the comp plan when I took office. Okay, so that's the first thing you had to face with a comp plan that had not been updated in over 10 years, which is required every 5 years, okay, and on an ongoing basis. The consultant went out, came back, and said, hey, here are our going-in assumptions. We think that they're very conservative based on what's happening in the market today. This is 2005. Okay? They projected growth upwards of 6% annually for well into the future. It ain't gonna stop. In my civilian job at the time, I had the opportunity to be working with fund managers that manage $8 billion of state trust fund monies. On the side, I approached those fund managers, as well as our independent consultants that we had from Boston, and said, hey, so this is what these guys are telling me, is 6% sustainable. And people who get paid a lot more money than I do said, 6%, that's it? Because we're projecting much more than that. I came back and I told our financial consultants to say, hey, look, cut it to 1.5%. And they go, what the hell are you doing? We're projecting, I said, cut it to 1.5%. I want to base our assumptions on that and our growth rate going forward. Why is that? Because I wanted to ensure that the legacy I left behind was one that was sustainable, right? And you can look at it now in 2012 and say, well, yeah, but didn't you see 2008 coming? I didn't realize I was going to get mobilized active duty in 2008 either, but I went. Okay? The answer was in 2005, when this finally came out, and the report came out in mid-2006, we were well within the city's bonding capability to go forward with the revenues that were projected, with a very low growth rate, to be able to sustain the payments of this complex, as well as our public safety complex, and provide the adequate facilities for our staff, which work every day to support all of us and what we do. That was easy. It was an easy sell to do because it was conservative estimates and the revenues would support it. Okay? So we took it, we sent it to council for a vote, we came up for a vote, we moved forward. All right, so in 2006, basically I think the actual groundbreaking was, I think, December of 2006, when we turned the first shovel full of dirt out here. We embarked and proceeded forward with building this facility. We knew when we built this facility there would be a slight amount available for growth, because we knew at the time we'd level out somewhere about 8,000 to 9,000 people, and then we'd go to phase 2, roughly 10 years down the road, and we'd get to our proverbial 12,500, 15,000 people. So that's what this building is sized for. This building and the public safety building were sized to meet the demands of this city for 50 years, without the need to come back and say, hey, we hosed this up. We need to add another 10,000 square feet on this thing. We didn't do that, right? Like we all know when building a house, cheaper to build it and put it in up front than it is to come back and do it later. Okay? And that's the way we did it, and that's how it was done. So that's a brief little history lesson on what happened to get this building to where it is today. Are there vacancies here? Absolutely. And I can tell you, having gone through this, in this city, either a member of council for 2 years or as mayor for 4 years, I'm not going to here to tell you what you should vote or how you should vote. That's your own personal decision on what you believe the facts to be. But I can tell you, if you're unhappy with services, there's a reason for that. If you're unhappy with the way things look, there's a reason for that. Okay? If you're not involved with your city council and you're not involved in looking at the numbers and where they sit, then you ought to be. Because anything else, is basically just hearsay. Okay? Over the last 2 years, as I mentioned, folks have been coming to me and saying, hey, can you give me the history? Can you give me the history? Can you give me the history? I chose tonight to come to give the history. That's what's happened, and that's how we ended up with this facility as it is today. There was not a ramrod through. It was a very careful and deliberate process that we went through. And if Shelley were here, our former city attorney, she will tell you that if anybody in this world is more risk adverse than me, she had a hard time finding that individual, because I'm extremely risk adverse and wanted to make sure that every contract was in fact locked down solid as we got moving forward. When you look at the construction costs for this facility, when we first broke ground, when we said, we need you to pour asphalt, they said, what day do you want us to pour? Because if you want it next week, this is what the price is going to be. If you want it this week, it might be a little lower. With what was happening in 2006 and 2007, 2008. Building was going on like crazy, which means prices were changing daily for petroleum products because they're pouring asphalt everywhere. When we went to do the drop shipment here for the lumber required for this place, when we first, same thing, okay, the contractor said, give me the lumber. When do you want it? Because that'll depend on what the price is going to be. So fortuitously or not, when they finally started pouring the asphalt to create this parking lot and everything else and start drop shipping the lumber, the housing market turned. Okay, so now we're starting to talk in 2008. It started to turn. As a result, this building was built under cost. The original bond values that we had set up before was built under cost, because everything with the estimates that were done came in below that because of what happened in the community, what happened in the rest of the world. And for those of you that think that this is a city of DuPont issue, this revenue versus expense issue, look at Pierce County government, look at Washington state government, look at the federal government. This is not unique to the city of DuPont. This is everywhere in this country. The state of Washington laid off over 11% of its workforce in the last 4 years. 11% of its workforce has been laid off, gone, as a result of the recession. Okay? The greatest recession that we've had in this community, in this country, since the Great Depression. I'm convinced we don't call it a depression because we don't want to freak everybody out. Okay? But the fact of the matter is it's time to put this issue to bed tonight. okay? The decisions have been made, council has voted, it's up to you now whether you want to support it or not. I get there'll be differing opinions on whether this is good, bad, indifferent. That's fine. Everybody understands that, okay? And everybody's entitled to their opinion to vote the way they want to. That's why it's a secret ballot. But the idea of, was there anything going on? Why do we get these bad contracts and all that other stuff here? I'm here to tell you, I was here, I lived it, I breathed it for 4 years putting this thing together. And I can tell you right now, I was absolutely risk adverse, and Shelley will back me up on this, I know she will, in that we made sure that we got the best deal that we could at the time for the city. Okay? So, like I said, I'm not going to advocate one way or another for this thing. All of you got to decide that. But I just wanted to share a little bit of that history lesson so I get people stop asking me, what did we do during this time frame in 2004 to 2007 on, when we built this thing, and I hear all about these sleight of hand things that happen. And I'm here to tell you, if anybody wants whatever I know, I'm happy to share that. But as far as I'm concerned, it's done, and it's done now. Thank you.
Thank you.